Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. We're going to get started here momentarily. We'll give everybody an opportunity to get into the room. So we have not yet started. I'm just talking to fill the silence. So as you're entering the room, you can realize whether your speakers are on or not, and we'll get going here in a few seconds. Thank you for joining us here today. So our numbers are still growing. They're starting to taper off a bit. I'm sure more people will join us here over the next few minutes as per usual, but we could get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Quinn. Thank you for joining us here today. We have a conversation about artificial intelligence in patent practice, and we're specifically going to address the use of AI for chemical and biotech patent work as well, because as you all know, I'm sure AI has begun to transform patent practice, but there are unique challenges that are presented by the chemical and biotech areas, and we're going to talk about that today. What can AI truly do at the moment well in that space in particular? And we appreciate you spending a portion of your day here with us today. So let's kick it over to Renee to introduce our speakers, and then we'll be off to the races. Renee.
Thanks, Jean. So on our panel today, we have Carola Lempke. She serves as Director of Patents at AstraZeneca in Gothenburg, Sweden. With a background in biochemistry, she leads patent prosecution and IP strategy across life sciences technologies in the pharmaceutical space, bringing scientific domain expertise together with IP leadership in an international corporate setting. Next, we have Monique Perdok. She is a principal at Schwegman, Lundberg, and Woessner, where she advises clients on patent procurement, freedom to operate, validity opinions, licensing, and due diligence in biotechnology and chemical patent prosecution. She holds a BA in biology, a Ph.D. in molecular biology, and a JD from William Mitchell College of Law. Next, we have Sean Suter. He's the founder and co-owner of Suter Swantz IP, a U.S.-based IP law firm with degrees in chemistry, physics, and English literature, plus a JD from Crichton. He brings a unique interdisciplinary approach to patent practice. He's registered before the USPTO, admitted to multiple federal and appellate courts, and also teaches patent and copyright law at Crichton University and previously at Peking University School of IP. Next, we have Ed Dashambu. He is the CTO and co-founder of DeepIP, an AI-driven patent intelligence platform. Prior to launching DeepIP, he co-founded Keeley Technology, where he built and scaled advanced AI solutions for demanding enterprise and security environments at DeepIP. He leads the technology vision, combining machine learning with practical workflow improvements to help patent professionals focus more of their time on high-value work. And last but not least, we have Gene Quinn. He's a patent attorney and one of the most respected voices in patent law and innovation policy. He founded IPWatchdog back in 1999, and today is widely recognized as a leading resource in the IP community. Gene is known for his deep expertise in software patentability and U.S. patent practice, and has been named multiple times among the top 50 most influential people in IP, as well as one of the world's top IP strategists. So you're in great hands with this panel. Back to you, Gene.
Great. Thanks a lot, Renee. And again, thank you all for joining us here today for this conversation. We're going to talk about chemical and biotech patent work, and specifically what can artificial intelligence do today to help you in that space. What I'd like to do is go around the table here and get the preliminary thoughts from all of our panelists on this topic before we move forward into what we specifically plan to discuss. So Carola, let's go to you first and get your big picture thoughts on the use of AI in the chemical and biotech area. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I think it's super exciting. I think we've really seen a lot of changes happening now, maybe starting in the last few years. And I believe in the next 5 years, we will see even more dramatic changes. And I mean, sort of the two areas I want to pick out here is the use of AI when it comes to analyzing patent documents and analyzing scientific literature. And the other part is generating text, patent-related text in the space of patent drafting, but also patent prosecution.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Monique, your initial thoughts.
My initial thoughts. So I do find this a very exciting time to be in this area. AI certainly, I believe, is helping in biotech prosecution, is helping increase the product quality that you put out. I think as far as efficiency gains, that might be more modest, but I do think that it allows you to definitely increase the product quality, and I'm excited to continue to play around with these tools and use them in my workflow, and learn how to better use them and how I need them to generate the output.
Yeah, and that's something I want to get to, because it's how do I want it, and yep. that takes a little work to not bad work, but it takes a little bit of education, I guess you might say, on the part of the user in order to really maximize these super powerful tools. So thank you, Monique. Sean, your initial thoughts.
I'm excited too. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed about it, unlike other technologies, is that it can be used from the front beginning of the process to the very end. It's horizontally enabling. Everybody that works in a law firm can use it in some way, probably in everything that they do, to make their job more accurate, maybe more enjoyable. Things are moving fast, and I'm enjoying learning about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say make it more enjoyable. I mean, I think a lot of us got into this space maybe because we couldn't invent ourselves, but we were really fond of innovation and creativity. And when I use AI, I find it just really helps plant the creative seed. It gives me ideas. It's really good at brainstorming. It's really good at collecting my thoughts. And I do feel like the quality I put out is much higher because of it. Although, you know, when you sit back and you look at it, I think if I compared what AI delivered and what I actually settled on, there's some obvious comparisons, but it's not a total rewrite situation, but it's different. It's still a human product, but I do think AI makes me very much more productive, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. But before we go too far in deep, Ed, I want to give you the microphone so you can give your preliminary thoughts as well.
Yeah. So if you would ask me this question 1 year ago, I would have said the AI was not super useful. But I think today AI is finally becoming useful for chem and life sciences, even if it's not magic. And it's becoming useful for different things, for different areas. I think in terms of data ingestion, so the kind of data that AI can understand. AI is becoming stronger in understanding compounds, understanding sequences. It's also, AI is also super useful when it comes to understanding inventions. So to prepare, for instance, inventor interviews. When it comes to drafting for different parts, so even the claims, but also drafting examples, drafting definitions, it starts to bring value. And last but not least, when it comes to review, assess risks, AI can also bring some value and starts being credible here.
Okay, excellent. So before we go any further, let me let the audience know if you have any questions for the panel. If you could put them into the Q&A box, I'll be monitoring the Q&A box. And if you want to chat amongst yourselves, or if you need tech support, you can go to the chat box. Renee and her team are monitoring the chat box. We also have someone from DeepIP in the chat box as well. So if you have a very specific question about that tool, you can feel free to ask that in the chat, and we'll get you an answer as quickly there as we possibly can. And before we go any further, what I would like to do is share the results on the first poll question, which was really to just kind of get an idea of who is in our audience. And by large margin, the most of our audience here today are in-house people. We do have a sizable law firm contingent, and then the next biggest is other. So we have a lot of people obviously very interested in this and what it can do. Before we go into, and we have a video we want to share with you, but Monique, I saw when I was talking about the creativity and how I think AI lets me focus on being better and brainstorming, I saw you smile a little bit. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you might have been thinking then.
Yeah, brainstorming and being better. What I was thinking was, sometimes, I might be asked to work in an area that I haven't worked in before. So I'm a molecular biologist. I'm used to working with genes and proteins. Occasionally, maybe I'll get something about, let's say, treating wastewater. And it has molecular biology components or organisms that would be involved in it. And I might sit there going, okay, here's all the parts to the claim, but how do you begin to claim this? If we're going to talk about genes and proteins, I gotcha. But other things that are a little bit more tangential to what I normally do, I'm like, how do you begin to claim this? And so I have gone to AI and said, okay, here's all the data. You draft me a claim. Like what would be an independent composition claim? And then it'll provide one. And oftentimes I deconstruct that, parts of it. I'm like, nope, those go in the independent claim. That needs to broaden out that, so it's a big rewrite, but it helps like get me over my writer's block, my blank page syndrome. How do I address something that I haven't worked in before? So it gets me going.
It's the tyranny. It really addresses the tyranny of the blank screen. Because if you stare at a blank screen for too much longer, all you're ever going to wind up doing is staring at that, or I always say staring at said blank screen. So it does, I think, really help. The other thing I think it helps with a lot is what I've used it sometimes. I have in my head a little bit sometimes trouble figuring out how to structure something, and I'll write like a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. Upload this into the systems, and then I'll say, okay, I want this. This is what I want. I want to focus on this piece, and it has to have this tone, and I have to have this be sort of the end result that I want to get. And it meshes it all together. And then there will be some rewriting, sometimes some significant rewriting, but it does now become an endeavor to edit rather than think in the first instance, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to put it all together? Carola, I see you were shaking your head as we were having this conversation. What thoughts do you want to share, maybe?
Well, I could just kind of underline that what Monique and what you said. I mean, AI makes it really easy to go through different scenarios, and really sort of combine them. And I think this is also very much where essentially professional judgment is so much still needed in order to work with AI. So you can ask AI to give me 5 different versions of creating a method for X, and then you can sort of essentially pick the best one and tweak that in a very sort of freer and very simple or very quick way. I think that you really can sort of gain a lot of time by using AI within your thinking process.
Yes, absolutely. And Sean, final word before I turn it over to Ed to show us a little show and tell here. Any thoughts on what we've been kicking around here about using AI, brainstorming, what you find most useful at the moment?
Trying to draft claims that do something specific and still maintain their support in the specification and make sure that they're patentable across a family of cases that the references are slightly different in and the priority dates are different. It's very helpful in navigating through that.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so Ed, let's turn it over to you so that we can put some context into what we have here to discuss. in terms of using the DeepIP system or tool?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we will focus on the drafting module, even if at DeepIP we have different modules. We also offer an office action, patentability, patent review modules, prior art search, as well as a portfolio intelligence module. But let's focus on the drafting. So the DeepIP drafting module is directly integrated in Microsoft Word. So that means no formatting loss, no tab switching, no context loss. And so let's start with an hypothetical pharmaceutical invention. So you can, as a user, select the right jurisdiction and technology field. And DeepIP will adapt automatically the downstream reasoning. So the formatting, the claim style, the terminology, etc. You can even upload a patent example. For chemistry, you can upload compounds as a SDX, CDXML, SDF files or images. And once done, DeepIP has them in the context and can, for instance, convert a molecule, a compound, into its UPAC name or into its SMART or SMILES representation. So it gets an understanding. For life sciences, you can do the same with the sequences. Upload them as a CSV, Excel, or ST26 XML. And same thing, when you do that, they are in the context of the model, and you can start playing with them. And for instance, ask the model to identify CDRs and use them downstream when drafting. So from there, you can use the assistant to, for instance, get a structured invention summary that captures the core technical contribution. So here I ask the model to summarize the invention into a few bullet points. And this summary can become a shadow reference between the research and development department and the in-house and outside the council. And if I have a meeting, I can also generate questions to prepare it, for instance, to highlight the missing data, ambiguities, or maybe new angles for my claims. And so with more preparation, a briefing meeting can become a more strategical session, and maybe saving hours later in the drafting process because having more alignment. So from there, you can draft the claims, different kind of claims. For instance, a composition claim. You get a first draft, so no blank page. You can iterate on it, and you get so first credible first draft. You can do the same with other kind of claims, such as Marcus claims. And so here the model leverages the list of compounds that we uploaded before to propose a scaffold that is editable. So you can use prompting or direct edition of the graphical representation of the molecule to change the scaffold, like rename a group, add age instead of a COH, etc. Then you can use the model to do some risk assessment. So maybe challenge the claim, the composition claim for 101 eligibility. So even if it's not a legal advice, it can be valuable to generate early warnings. So the assessment is pretty detailed. And then you can go even further, asking the AI to rephrase and to amend the claim, adding some elements to make it more robust, and to avoid any risk of a 101 rejection. And so here I ask the model to put the new elements in bold to make them clear. So I have my claims. I can go to the detailed description. So here the AI can be used to write term definitions. So here we asked with a custom prompt to extract a list of terms to define from in the claim, and for each of them to generate a definition. So you can write definition in bulk, but you can also write them one by one. And remember that you can customize the style of the definition, for instance, giving an example a patent. In biology, something useful that you can do is leveraging boilerplates. So on the left in the Word document, I copy-pasted a templated boilerplate. And what you can do, so with placeholders, is ask the model to directly edit the boilerplate and replace all the placeholders with values that are in the context in my list of sequences. And so the model automatically fills the placeholders with sequence ID numbers, with framework regions, with function description, etc. And it does that in the review mode of Word, so that I can keep control and approve or reject the modification one by one. You can also use AI to generate examples, and so to compile and to combine a lot of material coming from the inventor. So here we uploaded in the context a lot of PDFs, PowerPoints, describing experiments, and I ask the model to generate an experimental example about spironolactone solubilization and providing the data, the explanation of the data, and a conclusion that supports my claim. And so here we get the table and the draft, and we can directly import that in Word. So instead of starting from a blank page, this kind of tools, those tools like DeepIP, give you a guided workflow that can accelerate the whole process. Back to you, Jim.
So that's fascinating, you know, and I think that's one of the things I was talking about. When you have some input, you tell it what to do, it gives you something back, then you can focus. Okay, I need more on this, elaborate on this, and you kind of direct it as it's going. It almost feels to me like as these AI tools continue to get more and more sophisticated, the user is becoming more like a director or producer of a movie. It's like, no, I don't want that. I want this, or a little bit more of this, a little less of that, or, you know, that sort of thing. So it's really, I find it pretty remarkable. But let's go around the horn here and get your thoughts again. Sean, let's start with you this time. When you look at this kind of a tool and what it's capable of doing, and particularly in the chemical and biotech area, which we're talking about here today, which you know, has not been an easy nut to crack initially for AI. What are your thoughts on how useful it is at the moment for you and your practice?
It's very good at looking brilliant, but you do have to check it and make sure that it's not hallucinating or providing you with structures that are outside or unworkable. But it can give you a lot of options very quickly, but you have to remember to check to make sure that what it does provide you with is accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ed, maybe I can go back to you on this. What can you say about the accuracy? And everybody's familiar with the term hallucinations. And in my experience dealing with AI, that's gotten a lot better. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that you as a human don't have a role. You still have a very important role. But where are we in the evolution of accuracy for these tools?
I mean, it makes assumptions, and unless you test it on, or you're used to using it, you don't know how it bases those assumptions or what it's doing to get to where it's providing you with data. So if you start slow and build up to it, it's easier to control the outcome, and you're more likely to understand the thought process. It's like working with another human being that you don't know in the beginning. You have an idea of what their background is. And the more complex a task you give them, the less likely it is that you're going to get a good result. But if you go through an iterative process where you're collaborating and building something, you can get a much better result.
Yeah, no doubt. Ed, any thoughts on the hallucination issue?
Yes, so historically, dealing with long sequences or hundreds or thousands of compounds was a huge bottleneck for models, and a big source of hallucination. The trick, and what improved a lot, is that now you can equip those models with dedicated tools that allow them to properly process the sequences, properly process the compounds, properly factorize a ton of compounds into a scaffold. And this reduces a lot the hallucinations. And so occasionally you can have drift in long documents, and the reasoning can still be sometimes limited, but nothing to compare with what we had even only six months ago.
Okay, excellent. Carola, your thoughts on what you've seen so far and what others have said about using this tool, and do you have concerns about hallucinations, and how do you have your people control the environment, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, hallucination I think are still a problem, and I think they're probably less so than they were 6 months, a year ago. But I think they are. I mean, and two things which need to be really done. I think one is being really good at talking to the model, so using prompting effectively. So in a way, by being essentially specific and providing specific back data, specific information. So the more specific or clearer the background information is, which is fed into the model, and the more specific essentially the prompts are, the less likelihood there is hallucination. So that is one thing. But the other thing, which is the case, that these tools, as they get better, they also are very, very confident in very often creating hallucination or creating the wrong connection between material. And so you need to be very much sort of train yourself to read through the output material, looking for those hallucinations or those errors which are built in, because they are different errors compared to how a human would make them. So I mean, in my experience, almost every tool, every model has its own error, its own section where they sort of sometimes go offline. And then once you understand that, you have a tool to work against that.
Okay, and Monique, your thoughts on this, and open-ended. I have some more questions, but open-ended right now.
Sure. So I have several thoughts. First, I know just a couple of months ago, the ability to work with sequences within AI was non-existent or really clunky, not useful at all. So it's come a long way, as Ed had shown. to be able to put them in there, deduplicate, what's your next number, deal with skip sequences, be able to import and export in a format that's useful with the WIPO sequencer, standard 26, that whole thing. But what with Carola had said about hallucinations, I do agree there are still hallucinations. Sometimes I'll ask, what does the document say about X? And and where does it say it? And it'll say, on page 2, line 3. And I'm like, that's nowhere on page 2, line 3. It's in there usually somewhere, but it's like it sometimes has its own idea of page numbers and line numbers or paragraph numbers. Sometimes it'll talk about paragraphs when there's no paragraph numbering, so you got to figure out what paragraph it's talking about. But also, as Carola had mentioned, really good prompting. As you saw with Ed's video there are built-in prompts, and that's a great way to get started if you haven't dealt with AI yet in this aspect. And then you probably move on to 1 or 2 words, maybe a couple of sentences. But, my prompts are now like almost a full paragraph. I might say, you're a patent expert, analyze these 3 documents in view of this case law that I've uploaded, and look at my claims, or what kind of argument would you make, or how valid are, and really direct it and really get really specific to get the output that you want, to get something much more valuable than you may have thought originally would be possible.
Yeah, and I know this is going to, compare apples to elephants here, but I recently just saw an article on the new Coca-Cola Christmas commercial, and it was created by AI, and they said that there were 70,000 prompts that went into the creation of that particular, video, which, winds up being presented to us in either 15, 30, or 60-second interval, so it's not like you're creating a movie, you're creating a commercial. And so I don't think that, we need to probably be doing that in the patent space, because of what we're trying to accomplish isn't creating, video, or essentially like a cartoon video. But
I see a parallel
prompting
to
is
that,
everything. Prompting is everything. Monique, go ahead.
Sorry. I see a parallel to that, though. Like, an inventor may send me a picture of a mouse, right? I mean, I work in biotech space. I'm going to have non-human organisms, and I'm going to need a line drawing. So I upload it into the program. I get a line drawing, and I'm going to do, prompts. I'm going to say, okay, add an arrow at its left foot. Draw a circle around its right foot. So there's going to be all kinds of prompts and questions I'm going to add so that I can talk about these things in the patent application. So yeah, 70,000 prompts for one video, but I'm using them myself to generate one figure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were at one of our programs recently. It may have been our annual women's program, and it came up that one of the companies was using some AI tools for, this purpose, and their prompts are routinely, they said, like 3 or 4 pages long. And I mean, so there's a lot of thought, because you got to think, like, we're essentially, as smart as these AI tools are, they're really kind of dumb, right? Because they have it's dumb like an encyclopedia dumb, like when we were growing up, our parents bought these encyclopedias and you have them on the book. So that encyclopedia is dumb. It's got all the information in there if you as the person know where to go and find it. And that's, I think, what these AI tools are, is you need to make the AI tools smarter. Ed, you seem to be agreeing.
So I do agree with the importance of prompting. Something important to keep in mind is that those models, so they are very good at 2 things. First one is generating text, so drafting, without doing any typos. And the second thing is they are reasoning models, so reasoning machines, but without a lot of knowledge, in fact. So a bit like a junior. So coming from a good university, so very smart, but lacking a lot of knowledge on the job. And so you need to make, to leverage them at their maximum, you need to provide them with the right context. So with the right document to reason on. So they need to be able to access the right information, to have the right information in front of them. And if they don't have the context they need, they will try to guess. And that's when hallucinations happen. So something important to keep in mind is to give them the right documents, so the right patent example, the right source of definition if you are looking for something very specific, the right list of sequence, the right list of compounds, so that they can play with them and they can reason about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the chat, I see one of the questions that came up is whether you can create your own private repository of patent literature. And you can, in fact, do that. And I think that's one of the things where AI, I feel like it gets even better because you're essentially giving it what you want it to rely on. So you know what's in those documents. And that I think also helps to some extent with the hallucinations, you know, because if you're using these as your primary source, you're already more familiar with those for, you know, a variety of different reasons. Let me, before we go too much further, let me share this last poll question so that we can kick this around about what are the biggest bottlenecks when handling life sciences and chemistry patents. And we have the number one answer is drafting high quality applications. And number two, not too far behind that, is prior art searching and patentability. And let me go around to each of you. Monique, maybe we could start with you on this one. Is that, are those the two choices that you would have elected, or is there another choice here? Does it surprise you?
It doesn't, no, it doesn't surprise me. I haven't used it a lot for prior art searching and patentability assessment. I mean, some, not the tools that you would use for drafting or helping you out with office action responses. You know, I think it's good at, it's really good at really basic, like rote things like, how would I put that? Like if you have your claims done, you can ask it to draft a summary. It may need some work on that. May put it in too much prose and you don't like it, you know, editing your claims as much. You can ask it to draft a background if you already have your data put in there, your examples put in there, and so it knows what the context is. Again, you have to be careful because sometimes I find the background gets too close to the invention, and I don't want that in my background. You can ask it to do an abstract. You can ask it to draft the field of invention, right? You're reviewing all of it, but it makes those really very routine tasks much quicker. You know, but there are some things that you just have to work on a better prompt, or you have to ask better questions. You know, I might say, oh, I don't know what CBD means. Define CBD. And it, you know, it might define it as something to do with cannabis, but now I have to say, no, define it within the context of this document and let it know the document. Oh, you mean a cell binding dipeptide, not something to do with cannabis, you know? So you do have to direct it, and you have to pay attention to it, because it might, right? It's going to give you probably a correct answer, but for something, but maybe not for yours. So I do find, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of people use it to maybe draft their figure descriptions. That may be easier in the mechanical and the electrical arts. You know, when I've got a mouse or a Western, a Northern, or a Southern blot, like it doesn't know what it's looking at, right? It's got these blobs on, you know, on a screen, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to interpret that? What am I supposed to say? So I have to give it the proper context and have it explained. So some of that I don't find that as easy to translate into biotech or chemical. I think it's easier for mechanical, electrical, is that they can get an idea of what it looks like. So I do think it certainly increases quality, because, yeah, you can ask it all kinds of questions about your claims. Again, and some efficiency in very routine matters. As Ed had said, like you take a really smart person. I kind of liken it as, you know, you take a first year associate, really smart person. They just don't have any practical knowledge of how to go about doing things. So the more, the better questions, the better direction you can give, the more context you can give, the better output you're going to get from the AI.
Yeah. Context, I think, is everything with AI, because the more context you can give it, the better it's going to deliver for you, whatever you are asking it to do and whatever you need it to do. Carola, let me go to you next and ask you, I mean, um, what do you think? Well, first off, with this poll question, do you agree that drafting high quality applications is really the biggest bottleneck, or is there something else here on the list that you, from your in-house perspective, find more challenging?
Well, I think it is drafting, it is prosecution, which came a bit lower in that poll. And it is also analysis, prior art searches, freedom to operate searches, that sort of thing. So, which are very time consuming and involve large amount of documents. So I think, and those two were mentioned very highly. So I would definitely agree with what the poll came out.
Okay. And so how do you, um, how are you guys using AI tools? Or first, may I ask you, are you using, and to what extent are you using AI tools internally?
Well, I mean, I work for a very large company, and so
Yeah, and I'm not
which
asking
is
like across the board, like just like in
life
this
goes well.
space.
Yeah, but I mean, in some ways, we can benefit from internal tools. So I mean, we have sort of safe AI tools which we can access through the company and use. So we don't have to go into the open source chat GPT. And then obviously then there are sort of a lot of tools like Deep AI, which we are exploring and looking how we can make use of that. I mean, one big part is really to get people motivated to use these tools because they are not, it takes some time to get really into that. I mean, all the things we said about learning to how to speak to them, learn how to prompt them, learn to understand what is a suitable context. So a structured text document gives much better end results than a sort of very, very complicated picture or scientific presentation they still struggle with. So these are things people need to learn before they really can make the most out of those tools. So that is something which is a little bit of a new challenge because people are patent attorneys. They have a background as chemists, as biochemists, and the like. But being sort of in the world of computers is something a bit new for everybody.
Yeah. So, and let me ask you this one follow-up question. What is your temperature on allowing the outside firms that represent you to use AI for, drafting or office action responses or searching or any of the stuff that, might typically get done when you're trying to obtain patents? Are you comfortable? Do you want to, are you tolerant? Do you encourage it? Where do you fall on the spectrum?
Well, transparency, I think, is really important.
Mhm.
Because I mean there will be cost implications because if there's a time saving, we as a customer want to see that. And but I mean, in the end, all work products are not really generated by AI. AI is a tool to generate attorney work products. And the attorney has really the obligation and the duty to really make sure that everything is correct, that everything makes sense. And if our external firms apply that vigor and that understanding to their work, I just applaud that. So
Okay, good, good. Because I know when the dawn of this, and it's funny to say that term, because the dawn of this type of use of AI was, like almost feels like it was just yesterday. It was, like a few quarters ago, really, for most people. But at the very beginning, a lot of clients were hesitant and said absolutely no. And over time, they've gone. Those folks that were absolutely no, I think, are now starting to really embrace it. And Sean, I want to maybe bring you into this conversation because then it gets you into the conversation about, are you delivering better quality? Can you deliver better quality? Are you saving time? And if there's time in being saved, a lot of the clients are starting to ask for, well, what's in it for them? And we had one question in the Q&A box specifically say, and I have some thoughts on this, but I'd like you to go first if you have thoughts. How can a smaller firm do this, because there's a cost to using AI? And now in the question in the box was about, with this pushing down billable hours, you know, it seems like there's a real problem for paying extra to use these tools. Do you have thoughts on that, you know, I guess push and pull?
Guess I'm less conflicted about it now. I don't know that it does save much time. I do think that it increases quality because it allows you to collaborate very closely with the AI, and you produce, I think, a more consistent, well thought out work product. It may be that over time, it will save time and those costs will need to be passed on to the client. How that works, I don't really know. You know, being everybody I work with is very tech savvy and is interested in technology. And because of that, we tend to take risk in adopting technology. I would say that a big portion of our clients are an absolute no on using this technology for a number of different reasons. And of course, you need to respect that. And, you know, we will. But as far as the cost of implementing it, you know, maybe we should have thought that through more, or maybe we will think through it more. But it's a new, interesting tool, and we're excited to learn more about it and adopt it as it improves.
Yeah, and Monique, maybe I'll ask for your thoughts on this too, since you're at a firm outside. My thought on this is, if you are not using this, then by the time that this gets, because I would agree with Sean, I don't know that we're seeing a situation where AI is saving time at the moment. I think that, you know, that's obviously the promise. I think AI is very good at increasing quality right now. And in the world we live in, whether we like it or not, whatever, if you have a valuable patent that's going to get litigated, the Federal Circuit will increasingly always say, whatever you put in the application was not enough. They won't give us a great information about what should have gone there, just that what you did was not enough. Well, AI really can solve that. You know, I mean, as long as the judges are not going to be disingenuous, you can put almost whatever you want into these applications and really meld it, and that ability is getting better. It is getting faster, and I think that what we're going to see is it's not going to translate in the short term in terms of the overall project being costing less and taking less time, but the end product being so much more robust. And that's what I see. And number two is if you're not using it, realize your competitors in firms of all different sizes are using this. And if and when you then wind up starting to tune in, realize, and we will, I think, get to a point where if you're not using it, you're at a significant disadvantage. Well, those who have been using it for several years are just going to have all kinds of knowledge, you know-how built up, and you're not going to be able to, it's going to take a long time to catch up if you were ever going to be able to catch up with those folks. I liken this to playing video games. I used to like to play video games. Renee got me a PS5 for Christmas last year, and it sits there because I can't figure out, you know, and you learn how to play these video games, and it's like, they'll say, okay, you will recall in the 2012 version of this game, in order to do X, you had to press X, Y, and Z. Like, no, I wasn't playing. I didn't have time. Now I've got a little extra time. I like to put in a quarter, and I like to play a game. And that's not where games are right now. And I feel like AI is the same thing. If you're not doing this every day, little by little, and learning, you're going to wind up like me, and you're not going to be able to play a video game at all ever. And a little cascading there, but I think in a group of nerds like we are, you probably get where I'm going with that. But Monique, what are your thoughts on this? Whether it's time saving, passing on to clients, is it enhancing quality? Is it a little bit of all of the above in your mind?
Sure. I'm going to step back to something you commented on about, you know, if you're not using it, you know, people are, and they're going to be so much farther ahead of you. So Carola had touched on it. You had touched on it, right? We're biologists, chemists, yeah, especially myself. I'm a biologist from my own background, getting into some of this tech where it is not where I'm comfortable, you know. So AI came out and I was like, okay, I'm not going to look at that. Our firm has regular meetings, so we get on, anybody who wants on. There's the AI hour, whatever we call it, and somebody will present about what they're doing now with this tool or that tool, what works, what doesn't work, how they're combining tools. And so I started learning, okay, this is what it can do. I started working with one tool. It didn't work at all for me. I think I wasted a whole day trying to figure out how it worked. I was like, that wasn't user friendly. So I went to another tool and I'm like, okay, this one works for me. I can understand this one. And I really started learning. So I think people just need to jump in wherever they are and just really just play with it, start learning. If it doesn't work, then find another tool that does, or contact the company and say, can you provide any resources? Can you provide any training to help you through this issue? Because there is a lot to learn. It is very simple once you get going, but you got to get going. I do agree that it absolutely improves product quality. You can put it in a certain context, like look at these three case law documents, look at these three cases, and in view of my claims, how make an argument of why they're patentable or why this case law would knock it down. And so I think you can interrogate documents, you can put it your patent or your claims in a certain context to have it look at certain things. And so it's very helpful. Again, yes, you do have to double check everything it puts out, make sure it's not hallucinating. I find, especially with case law, it may mention, it'll make an argument for you and then it'll cite a case law. And I'm like, I know that's not the holding. That it might be mentioned in there, maybe it's dicta, but I know that's not the holding of that case. So I might interrogate that case in AI a little bit to figure out where its thinking was. So you absolutely have to double check everything. But I certainly think it allows you to increase your quality, increase your thinking, interrogate all your documents, ask any question you want, see what comes back, and it allows you to follow up, like you're having a conversation. You don't have to keep restarting. You can be like, well, what about this? Well, if you add this in, and just keep going. So it absolutely increases the quality, especially if you have a certain budget you have to work with. You can now do a little bit more with that budget. You can make it more robust. When it comes to prosecution, sometimes it makes some crazy, like, hey, you should argue, unmet need. Well, okay, you can't just say unmet need. You got to have some evidence to back that one up. But it certainly puts out every argument, and you just weed through them going, nope, not that one, not that one. Oh, okay, let's explore this once more. And you can interrogate that. So I think quality helps. Efficiency gains, maybe modest, but certainly, we're not at the point where a client can go, hey, you should be drafting that office action for $500. That's not an option. It's not that efficient.
Yeah, no, and I also think that there's this, and hopefully clients will realize this, but there's this old story. I've been trying to think of how it goes, but I'll give you all the point enough. There's a guy who has locked all of his worldly valuables into a safe, and lost the combination, can't remember the combination, right? So he has to hire a safecracker to come in to open up his safe, so now he can get access to everything. So the safecracker walks in, takes the safecracker 60 seconds to crack open the safe, and it's open, and he hands the guy a $10,000 bill, and the guy says, $10,000? You've been here 60 seconds. And he said, yeah, you're not paying me for my time. What you're doing is you're paying me for the 40 years worth of knowledge that I have in my head that allowed me to walk in here and open up your safe. So now you have access to several $1 million of assets that you wouldn't have had if I wasn't here. And I feel like, so that's obviously a bit of a joke and so forth. But I think that there's a piece of that we have to keep in mind with using these AI tools. The AI tools in the hands of the right user are extremely powerful. But we're not at the point, and I don't envision us being at the point soon where you can just say, oh, hey, here's the notes from the inventor, write up an application for us, like a 100-page application with figures and tables and charts and, all that sort of thing, claims. It's not going to do that. But could somebody who has a Ph.D., patent attorney that has knowledge of that invention in that space use AI for that purpose to make better quality and eventually do it faster? I think the answer is yes. And if you're not using it to get better yourself of doing this, I think you're making a mistake. And I also think that for me, when I'm drafting, if I can get a draft and I become an editor, it's much better and much easier, much faster. And I think so. The people who are most at risk of losing their jobs from these tools are the folks that were over in India that were doing a lot of the cheap drafting, you know, and to some extent, you know, for better or for worse, it's maybe some patent agents and maybe some law school graduates like right out of law school, you know, because the tools can get you something that's that good already. And yeah, you got to check it. And they are, as Carola mentioned, making different mistakes than a human would make. But I think it's an exciting time about all this. So let me look at the clock because I don't want to. So we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that any of you wanted to say or wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to cover here yet today? Because I want to make sure all the panelists have an opportunity to say whatever it is that you all wanted to convey to the audience.
I would
Anyone?
add,
Sean, go ahead.
your goal is to save time. You're probably going to be able to save time, but you're going to have a very mediocre work product. And I worry about allowing people that don't have very much experience in the patent law or in the technology, because you don't really know what's wrong and what wrong looks like. And until you're really just after the highest quality work product, you could if your goal is efficiency and reducing cost, you're going to reduce quality. That's what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always the better, faster, cheaper. I can do two of those. I can't do all three of those.
Yeah.
But Carola, your thoughts, anything that you want to make sure we cover before we let the audience go?
I think one thing maybe in relation to the transparency, I think, I mean, one reason why I think a lot of people are hesitant is that it is unclear where the data go. I mean, these services operate in the cloud. And I mean, obviously, dealing with data from clients or your own data, there's a lot of security need around that. And that needs to be absolutely transparent and absolutely clear that this is really carefully dealt with and addressed, how that needs to be the case. So I think this is also one really important piece, that these tools can be really deployed. I mean, they need to work, but they need to also work safely.
Yeah. And do you have anything that you want to say, generally speaking, about the confidentiality? And we had the way somebody else put it in the Q&A was, you know, short-term memory. How short is the memory and what gets wind up being kept and retained and used?
Yes, thank you for raising this point. So as patent data is super sensitive, we have non-negotiable principles when we develop and when we do software on this. So it's security first. So every document, every figure, every sequence is encrypted, segregated. DeepIP is audited. SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 2701, ISO 40201. No user data is ever used for training. You remain in control. So the workflow is really a human in the loop. We have different deployment options. You can use the SaaS on Azure. You can get a private tenant, can even be deployed on your own infrastructure. So, so with all of this, we create a secure environment to make sure that you can benefit from AI, but without negotiating about the security and the confidentiality of the data.
Yeah, and we've done a number of webinars here with DeepIP, and I know that they do take the confidentiality very seriously, and we've addressed that a number of times. And obviously, if before anybody starts using it, that I think has to be probably the first question you ask any company that you're going to be working with, because you need to be comfortable with their answer. And I think what we've seen is there's a lot of companies that have grown up and gotten bigger in this space for a reason. And there was a lot of these emails that we would get, and I'm sure you all got them from people who, you look at their LinkedIn, and 6 months ago they were a college student, and they're telling you they can code something up for you in the patent space. Well, those players don't exist anymore, right? Because they didn't know what it needed to do, two, what we needed it to do, and three, have any real idea of the ethics or confidentiality requirements. And the people who are getting bigger and getting more adopted have to answer and do answer that question to the satisfaction of a lot of people. But obviously you need to make sure you're comfortable yourself. And because, as Carola mentioned, the transparencies, and if you're using it, you got to let the clients know. That's 101. So you have to be able to understand, one, and feel safe yourself, and two, be able to convey that either internally or to your clients outside your firm. Monique, I'll give you the final answer. We're right at time, but I want to give you the last opportunity. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure the audience heard before we left here today?
Geez.
And don't feel obligated, but I didn't want to give you, didn't want to.
Yeah. I would just say, if you're a biotechie or a chemist, and you're hesitant, just jump in and you can't do anything wrong. I mean, right? You're not going to ruin anything. Just take a test case, like even something that's already patented, and
Yep.
just start playing with it and asking questions, or interrogate different articles or case law, and and figure out what it can do for you, and so that you're ready to use it. And I mean, because like you said, your competitors are using it, and now the examiners are using it. So it's just going to get bigger from here.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Sean, did I see you raise your hand? Do you have one final thought?
As I have been creating prompts and entering them, I worry about whether those will be privileged or discoverable. It's going to be an interesting question. I think they probably will ultimately be privileged, but it's something to think about.
I think it's something to think about. What I would say in the 2 minutes over, so I'll just give you my quick thoughts on that. I can't imagine them not being some kind of privileged, like if work product privilege or, attorney client means anything, some of the stuff that we're creating on behalf of them and the tools that we use and the information that gets retained, I think has to be, but that's going to be a bigger conversation for another day, whether and when we have a case that approaches that. I'm sure we will. I'm sure that will be a question at some point in time, but put a pin in it for now. But I think I'm comfortable with that answer. Has to be yes. Otherwise every tool we use, I think, is in jeopardy. But we'll see. We'll see. So, well, thank you, panel. I really appreciate that. This was a great conversation. Ed, thank you to you for the creating the video and being here. We appreciate DeepIP's support over the years. We appreciate everybody in the audience coming today. I know we didn't get to all of the questions. We will make sure that the panel and DeepIP get the questions, and we'll have somebody follow up with you so that you can get an answer to everything that you raised. But we appreciate your time, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now, everyone.